Georgia Guidestones came to Elbert County under mysterious circumstances. A private group of citizens paid for the monument and the property where they stood before turning it over to the county over 40 years ago.
For years, the Georgia Guidestones have stirred controversy and sparked endless conspiracy theories. Many, including religious leaders, have tried to explain their meaning, yet no clear answers ever came. But now, that long-running mystery has finally been solved.
The overall height is 19 feet 3 inches from the surface of the ground to the top of the capstone.
Thank you. Congratulations.
There are slots and holes in the center stone that have astrological significance.
The new discovery has cleared the air at last, but what it revealed is far from good.
I've had people some and say it was some kind of Satan worship shrine and it ought to be torn down. And I've had others say it was the holiest spot on earth, that the Holy Grail was buried under there.
The truth behind the stones is darker than many imagined, and the meaning of the messages is deeply troubling. So what exactly do these messages point to? And why is the truth being revealed now? Join us as we uncover the full mystery behind the Georgia Guidestones. The mystery they never fully told you about the Georgia Guidestones. One of the shocking mysteries of the modern age appeared in 1980 on a hill in Elberton, Georgia, when a granite monument unlike anything in the region was unveiled. It was commissioned by a man who called himself R.C. Christian. That was not his real name, and no one knew who he was. He worked through local bankers and builders with strict instructions to never reveal his identity. From the start, the mystery around the Guidestones made the whole thing feel strange. And that feeling never really went away, but that was only the beginning. What came next raised even more questions. Let's dig deeper. The structure was carefully built. 4 tall stone slabs stood around a center pillar, all covered by a large flat stone on top. Each part of the monument was lined up with things in the sky, like the rising and setting of the sun, the North Star, and even the moon's position at certain times. It acted like a calendar and a compass, not just a monument. People who saw it often compared it to Stonehenge, but this one had writing carved into it. It was the writing that turned the Guidestones from an interesting landmark into a worldwide mystery. 10 rules were written in 8 modern languages, like English, Spanish, Swahili, and Hindi. The same messages also appeared in 4 ancient scripts. The words seemed like instructions for restarting the world, as if the stones were meant to guide people after a disaster. But instead of being comforting, the messages worried people. The most talked about line said, humanity should be kept under 500 million people. Since the world already had billions living on it, that one sentence made people think it was calling for a huge population cut. Some believed it was a plan for reducing the number of people. Others thought it was a warning that the Earth couldn't handle so many humans. Whatever it meant, that line became the most controversial part of the Guidestones. Other rules raised more questions. One talked about controlling reproduction based on fitness, which many people connected to the past idea of eugenics. That word made it seem like only certain people should be allowed to have children and build the future. Because of the painful history behind such ideas, people started to think that the person who made the Guidestones might have believed in dangerous beliefs. But that's all. Another rule talked about having a world court and a new universal language. To many, this sounded like a plan for one world government. Instead of looking like a peaceful call for unity, it appeared more like proof that the monument was pushing the idea of a new world order. It wasn't just the messages that caused worry. It was also the fact they were carved in stone, as if someone wanted these rules to last forever and shape how people live in the future. Religious groups were some of the loudest voices against it. They didn't just think the Guidestones were strange, they believed they were evil. The way the stones lined up with stars and planets made them think it had links to dark, spiritual forces. To them, this monument wasn't about God, but about hidden powers. Some pastors even told their churches to stay away from it, which made people even more curious. From there, larger connections were drawn. activists and conspiracy theorists tied the Guidestones to powerful organizations that already carried a reputation for secrecy. The Bilderberg Group, the Rockefeller Foundation, and the Club of Rome were all accused of being involved. To those who believed in hidden elites pulling the strings of the world, the stones were simply proof carved into granite that such groups had plans for humanity. Stories of strange activity around the monument added to its reputation. Rumors spread of rituals, gatherings, and witchcraft performed at night. Even without evidence, the stories stuck.
Well, a lot of times there's capsules in different places with different things in it.
Because the stones already carried an atmosphere of secrecy and power. Whether true or not, the tales made the Guidestones feel like more than just slabs of granite. They became a stage for human fears. For years, no one knew who R.C. Christian really was. The banker who helped him never said a word, and no one else claimed to be behind the project. That silence made people believe the theories even more. When the monument was blown up in July 2022, and one slab was badly damaged, the mystery didn't stop. Some believed it was destroyed because people thought it was evil. Others believed someone wanted to hide proof of a plan that had already come true. Even as broken pieces, the Guidestones still made people argue about what they really meant. But now, the mystery may finally be solved. The question that has puzzled people for years, who is behind the Guidestones, has just been answered. And the truth is more surprising than anyone expected. We know you're curious. So stay with us, because the full story is coming up next. The solved mystery of Georgia Guidestones. For more than 40 years, the name R.C. Christian was one of the greatest puzzles linked to the Georgia Guidestones. No one knew who he was, only that he appeared in Elberton, Georgia in 1979 with detailed instructions for a monument and a request for secrecy. He used a banker named Wyatt Martin to handle money, and Martin promised never to reveal the man's true identity. That promise held for decades. It allowed the mystery to grow until theories about Freemasons, secret councils, and hidden orders filled the air. The mystery began to clear only after the Guidestones were destroyed in 2022.
By some conservative Christians to be satanic, was badly damaged by an explosive device. One of the 4 granite panels on the Georgia Guidestones monument.
Following the blast and demolition, researchers went digging through old archives, letters, and personal papers. Wyatt Martin had saved some of his correspondence with R.C. Christian. In those files were letters, drafts, and notes that finally gave away the truth. The man who hid behind the alias was Dr. Herbert H. Kirsten, a physician from Fort Dodge, Iowa. After so many years of guessing, the name was not a group or a council, but a single doctor with strong and troubling ideas about how the world should be run. Kirsten's writings made it clear why he hid. He believed democracy was only a temporary system that would collapse with time. In its place, he wanted firm rules, strict order, and heavy limits. He believed the planet could not support billions of people. His solution was population control, and he saw reproduction as something that should be managed for fitness. These were not abstract ideas. They matched the very words carved into the Guidestones, like the command to keep the world's population under 500 million. The deeper investigators went, the darker his connections became. Kirsten had a relationship with William Shockley, the Nobel Prize-winning physicist famous for co-inventing the transistor. Shockley was brilliant in science but notorious for his eugenics beliefs, arguing that only the fit should reproduce. Kirsten admired his thinking and kept in touch with him. Their shared views gave the Guidestones their flavor of cold calculation, where science and social engineering were mixed with survival planning. His trail also crossed into racial politics. Kirsten provided funds to David Duke, the white supremacist and former leader of the Ku Klux Klan. Supporting Duke linked him directly to extremist movements. It meant the Guidestones were not simply born from abstract philosophy, but tied to someone who placed his money and support behind radical racial agendas. That connection has since shaped how the stones are remembered. The choice of Elberton, Georgia, had its own reason too. Kirsten believed the region was a survivable zone in case of nuclear war. In the late 1970s and early 1980s, fears of nuclear conflict were high, and people often speculated about which areas might be spared in a global strike. Elberton's granite industry also meant Kirsten could build something massive and enduring. To him, it was the perfect place for a message that he hoped would guide survivors of a ruined world. What shocked researchers most was another discovery about the Guidestones. It was later found that the Guidestones were only one part of Kirsten's bigger plan. In his letters, he talked about a second monument he wanted to create, called the Directive. Unlike the Guidestones, this new project was more extreme and not as carefully worded. His early drafts included rules that didn't just talk about population control. They also suggested sterilizing people who were seen as unfit to have children. This showed that Kirsten didn't just want to guide future survivors. He wanted to change the future of humanity through force. His plans connected him to a group called the World Future Council, a private think tank that supported global government and controlling population. Kirsten's drafts reflected the council's ideas, mixing his own beliefs with their wider goals. While the Guidestones stood in one place, he was already thinking about a global system where the same rules could be enforced everywhere. He didn't want to stop with Georgia either. Kirsten's notes for the directive said more monuments could be built in faraway, isolated places like Patagonia and Iceland. These spots were picked because they were remote, safe in case of war, and had long-lasting landscapes. To him, the Georgia Guidestones were only the first step in a network of stone instructions spread across the world. Looking back, parts of his ideas sound familiar, though with different names. Kirsten wrote about balancing human rights with social duties, controlling population growth, and using resources carefully. Today, these topics often come up in discussion about climate change, global health, and sustainability. While the words have changed, the connection has kept suspicion alive, with many wondering if ideas once seen as extreme are now part of normal policy. To understand how all this began, we need to go back and explore the strange history behind the Guidestones themselves. Keep watching. How the Georgia Guidestones really began. In 1979, a man using the name R.C. Christian walked into the Elberton Granite Company in Georgia with a set of unusual instructions. He wanted a massive granite monument built. He carried precise measurements, sketches, and a clear vision. The workers thought it was a strange request, but Christian insisted the monument had to be large, strong, and able to withstand disaster. Money was not an issue, but secrecy was. He said the name he gave them was not his real one. Christian explained that he represented a group of loyal Americans who wanted to leave guidance for the future. Their words, he said, would outlast them. At the time, the Cold War raised constant fears of nuclear conflict. His group believed that if the world ever collapsed, survivors would need advice carved in stone to help them rebuild. That was the purpose of the monument. To make the plan work, Christian needed someone to manage the financial side. He turned to a banker named Wyatt Martin. Martin became the only person who ever learned Christian's real identity. Christian swore him to secrecy, and Martin kept that promise for life. Even when reporters, historians, and researchers pressed him for answers, he never revealed the truth. This single decision left behind one of the lasting mysteries tied to the stones. Once the land was secured, the monument was planned for farmland in Elbert County. The site was chosen for a reason. The ridge had a stable granite base strong enough to support the monument. Christian also believed the location could keep the structure safe if disaster struck, even if nuclear war broke out. The Elbert County granite industry was already known worldwide, so it was the right place for such a project. Construction took months. The finished design was a series of upright slabs, each one weighing many tons. Together, they formed a cross-like pattern, with a central stone surrounded by 4 outer slabs and a capstone placed above them. The builders made sure the structure was carefully aligned. Slots and holes were cut into the granite so the stones could mark astronomical events like solstices and eclipses. The Guidestones were revealed to the public on March 22, 1980. That date wasn't random, it was the spring equinox, a day when sunlight and darkness are equal. This matched the theme of balance shown in the monument. A crowd gathered in Elbert County to see it. The stones stood 19 feet tall, much taller than most people expected. Some compared them to Stonehenge, but the Guidestones were even taller. What surprised people most were the words carved into the granite. Because of its look and mystery, people started calling it America's Stonehenge. But unlike the real Stonehenge in England, this one had modern builders. Still, no one but Wyatt Martin knew who built it. The mystery of R.C. Christian made the Guidestones famous, not just in Georgia, but around the world. Over the years, thousands came to visit. Some were tourists, others were reporters. Some believed the stones were part of secret plans. But the Guidestones' fame also made them a target. People damaged the monument many times using spray paint and graffiti. Some of the writing said the stones were promoting evil. Others painted Bible verses on the granite. Each time, the county cleaned it up, but the damage kept happening. These repeated attacks showed how strongly some people disliked the messages written on the stones. On July 6, 2022, at 4:03 in the morning, the story of the Guidestones took its most dramatic turn. A sudden explosion tore through the site. Security cameras captured the flash as one of the large granite slabs shattered into rubble. The ground shook, and by sunrise, the destruction was on news channels everywhere. When officials examined the remains, they decided the monument was no longer safe. The standing stones could collapse without warning. Bulldozers were brought in later that same day. In only a few hours, the structure that had stood for 42 years was gone. The entire site was cleared and leveled, leaving nothing but a scar in the earth where the stones had once risen. Now the site is just farmland again. A fence keeps people out, and there's no sign or marker to show what used to be there. For anyone passing by, it looks like a regular field in Georgia. But for those who remember, it was once the place where one of the strangest monuments in America stood. The history of the Guidestones runs from a mysterious man arriving in 1979 to a granite monument unveiled in 1980, to decades of debate, and finally to an explosion in 2022 that erased them. There have been many conspiracy theories about the Georgia Guidestones. Which one do you believe, and why? Share your opinions with us in the comments section. If you enjoyed the video, like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Also, click the following video on your screen, and you will enjoy it.